I've got an agenda item for today.
Okay.
Have you seen Adam Boxer's post on LinkedIn from 2 or 3 days ago? You might have done because I liked it, so it might have appeared on your feed.
Don't know. Remind me.
Okay, so why I was particularly interested, he's talking about AI and diminishing teacher expertise, which I know we've talked about before and has come up in a few
Oh, this is the two beginning teachers.
Two beginning teachers, yes.
I did read this. Yeah. Oh, yeah, clever. Yeah, nice. I like it.
This feels like this is raising things that we talk about a lot anyway.
Yeah.
But I had not thought about it in terms of from the very beginning, to raise diversion of wood, how would they end up differently? But also, I mean, he's saying basically there isn't evidence to show how effective it is. And this idea about reducing thinking. They won't become great if they're relying on a tool that does all their thinking for them. And since we've been talking a lot about how much information we give to teachers anyway, I guess I'm thinking about how much thinking we're generating and what we're doing.
So I think this is a really, it's a good choice. It's really, like, super apt. It's really wide ranging as well as an issue. There's an underlying thread here, isn't there? That's appropriate across society. Do you know what I mean? Across industries too, about junior roles, AI de-skilling, or the automation of more basic skills tasks, making it difficult for junior roles to exist in such a way as that's where you gather all of your experience, right? And it's like that bloke we spoke to at that MapPN conference in Manchester who said, I would never want my staff to do what I did in 1997, which is spend every Sunday surrounded by a sea of books and so on, and doing all the marking into the night. You know, I wouldn't want that for any of them, but I think it made me a better teacher. It's a bit like that, isn't it? And there's that thread there, but there's another one as well, which is about identifying the things. It's kind of the same issue from the opposite direction. You're not getting the experience in order to have your own opinion about what makes a good resource, whether it's correctly, appropriately pitched for your class and that sort of thing. But you also, because you don't have that, you then can't identify whether it is or not. So beginning teachers would find it harder to see whether the resources are high quality or not. It makes me think about that. You put it in the reading list channel on Slack, didn't you? The Sweden and Australia research study about the effectiveness of AI generated content in teaching because of the amount of time that it takes teachers to review and edit and so on. Because there's a thing there, isn't there, as well? I was thinking when I first read that would vary dramatically for an experienced teacher and a junior teacher. Do you know what I mean? And actually, you'd probably have, it would feel falsely like the AI was being more effective for a junior teacher than an experienced one. Anyway, so there's a lot in that. Yeah, nice. Where do you want to start?
I feel like there's also the extra element of workload that factors into it as well. Because you've got an experienced teacher who also has time to go and use their experience to do really great things. And then you've got an experienced teacher who knows what they should be doing because they're really experienced but has no time to go and plan those things. So the example of if you've got access to really great resources, like you've got the PKC resources, you would be able to use those more effectively if you knew exactly when to deploy certain things and when to move on. But if you don't have those and you have to create it yourself, I don't quite know where that line of thought ends. It makes something that I've talked about a lot with more experienced teachers and colleagues is when we all got further into our careers, our PowerPoints, less on them, because I used to only really put things on there to remind myself what I was going on to next. Whereas at the beginning of my career, it was like every single thing had to have a resource, had to be accounted for, had to have timings and success criteria and questions, and everything planned out in advance because I couldn't think of it on the spot. And then when you get more experience, you have the confidence to ask a question and see that everyone doesn't know the answer, and then just throw your lesson plan out the window and go, okay, right, back to the drawing boards, everyone look at the whiteboards. we're going to cover this again?
I mean, on that one specifically, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember doing observations of people in my science department in Holy Family, and there was, that you would get. We had these beginning teachers that had, slides they'd spent ages on, and it had a banner across the top, and then the number of minutes in the corner, and the type of activity it was, right? And so they were doing, just like you said, trying to stick to the letter of the lesson plan because they weren't thinking on the spot. Question is, so they've got the additional benefit of having made that. If they were using it as a template resource and then continued through using that a lot, would that not also form a similar scaffold so that later when it said, what, think about this kind of activity or this question, how long would you give to that or whatever, you'd probably know just from using it, even though you didn't make it. I mean, it maybe wouldn't be as effective because you're not thinking about it as deeply. You're not going up the solo taxonomy, thinking about how that relates to other activities that are similar and things, because you've not done it. But you'd certainly be getting some maybe instinctive, but associative, memories and knowledge about those different activities.
So you're making me think about a couple of lesson observations that I've done recently on school visits. So there was one where I was doing a learning walk with a Senko, and we were just watching this lesson and watching it with a particular student in mind. And she spotted that the way that the TA was positioned meant that the student was able to start looking around the room. And she just made a note, like, I'll tell them to change the way they position their body, and then they'll have their full focus at the front of the room. And then there was another lesson that I saw, completely different school, where the teacher was following a framework that had been provided, like it was all centrally planned, the sort of outline. So they had particular things they needed to display, but they'd chosen, I can't remember the specific context of it. It was like they were modeling a particular skill, but the quotation they'd chosen or the text they'd chosen, there was just nothing there that you could draw out of it. So this whole class of students were really gamely trying to comment on this text, but there was nothing to say. It's a bit like watching a student reading a student in a GCSE essay who's trying to analyze a quote that just has no devices in it. It's nothing more than what it says. And both of those, it was the observer spotting the thing that would have made that teacher a better teacher.
But do you not think that if the kids that were doing that exercise, couldn't come up with much, even if they were trying, and then in another instance, you have a quote that's much better and more successful as the thing that you're using in that exercise, you might not notice the difference, or at least try and look at what made it more effective for next time you're putting the thing together. So does it matter if the quote that well, then maybe this is a good example, does it matter if you're always given the right quote? Does it matter that you don't know how to choose it if an AI can always give you the right quote for that lesson or context? You're not stopping the higher order thinking or the analysis of the quote happening in class, but the provision of that as a resource wasn't yours. Does it matter?
I think that's where the time thing comes into it as well, and maybe a bit of a primary secondary divide. Because if English is one of your 5 subjects you're teaching that day, and you're the maths lead, and you've got several students with additional needs that needs differentiation, and you've got a load of parents to call, and you're running a trip, I wonder if you even have a choice over whether you like the AI choosing the quote, or does it matter if you can do it or if AI can do it? Like, the thing is, you need a quotation to use in that lesson. Where it comes from is almost irrelevant in the context of everything else. Like, you could put loads of CPD time into that person being able to go and choose the best examples for themselves. But if they're only ever going to have 5 minutes to plan their English or to go through the resources, even as I'm saying it feels really savage to say it doesn't matter if you can't do it. But then there's also the being realistic about where, like, letting people be experts in particular things and not expecting everyone to be expert at everything.
But there's also realism about what is going to happen and what we should therefore be thinking about, what we should focus on being good at and get, because what we are going to either need to keep doing or at least want to keep doing in a world where models are doing some things better than us. Because that's already happening. I mean, we know that's already happening. Some of the stuff that we've been working on, right? there are ways in which we're being able to produce provably at least let's just say at least as good as average teacher output for particular things. And that'll be true for not taste necessarily, but you know, certainly sense checking. He finishes that post, doesn't he, if I remember correctly, by talking about that an AI video that he saw. And given that I'm pretty sure I know which one he's talking about.
Oh, really?
I don't want to. Yeah. There was one which, and it was close to my heart because if I remember correctly, and I won't say anything specific enough to out it, but it was a physics video, and it was a physics video about weight, and yeah, it was not great from a misconceptions point of view, and it looked good and it was engaging. That will definitely be the case. You know, was it nourishing? Going back to that thing, remember we talked about the kind of the diet analogy about, you know, is that was that a Mackie D's or was it nourishing content? You know, it might draw you in, but is it gonna sustain your development? I'm reasonably convinced you could already actually put videos like that through a framework that gets made by a company like us, even actually, and for particular curriculum linked use cases, check it for those accuracies, you know, in such a way as it would return a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on the script. So, okay, let's just say you can see whether or not the video is good or not. Then does it matter? Because there's a few things we're conflating at the same time here. You've got the quality of the resource and your ability to see whether the resource is good, and that is affected by your experience level, right? But then you've also got whether or not, all things being equal, so average experience level through the number of years that they've been teaching teachers, and you know, and then you've got all resources that are above a threshold level of not containing misconceptions, say, right? In that case, are you doing the individuals that then use those resources a disservice by providing them AI things rather than having them make them themselves? It would give them more time to work on using the resource in the classroom so that it's most effective. In that context, you know, maybe that's what we should be talking about, is that there's I don't know what the equation is. It's same video minus plus experience of making it, and then same video minus experience but plus time it would have taken to do it. This is really relevant, I'm realizing. Did you do this on purpose? As in the opportunities we have on the back of the student and teacher reports. I was talking to faculty about what they're doing with the content store just now, because we're helping them with their research on it. And I was talking about the Oak National Academy resources that we've got on the back of the reports. You know, in that case, what you've got is the ingredients from the lesson that you might teach on the thing that we're suggesting that they intervene on because of that piece of writing. But there's a big opportunity there to put any sort of things. But obviously, we're not going to leave it blank and expect the teachers to fill in the back page with the thing that they want then to get the kids to do, are we? So I hadn't really thought about this, but we are in one position over the other here. At least we're giving the opportunity. You can do this activity if you want to. Use your professional judgment whether it's sensible to do so. Here it is, you know, and we're being the quality assurance of that. So you've got to trust that, you know, in having looked at all of the different resources and because of the trustworthiness elsewhere in us as a service, you think that is, you know, likely to be a valid thing, and you trust it with your beginning teachers, for example. But they still don't have to use it, so it's an additional benefit rather than a replacement of something that they might make. So it's not quite the same.
I'm thinking back to the times when it was particularly with writing that I felt this most deeply. It's why I found punctuation and grammar in particular the hardest bit to do with writing, and especially comma rules, because I spent ages once writing out a load of different differentiated tasks for comma rules. So when I did my comma lesson, I could basically move the students around and get them working on different things according to how secure they were. So like commas in a list for this group, so I'm not using them at all, and then go up to the guys who you want dropping in subordinate clauses with brackets and commas and things that are a little bit trickier. But it was like I just couldn't do it all the time because I didn't have the capacity to go off and create resources. And like you must have had this too, right? When you say you've got a student who's working well below the standard of everybody else in the class, or a couple who've got a misconception no one else really has, and you almost end up spending like 20 minutes going through a load of different resource sites. Like I used to go onto Pairs and find a perfect resource, and then it costs £5. I'm like, I'm not paying out principal.
I was outraged when they added price to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you end up like that sunk cost fallacy thing again, where you've sat there for 20 minutes trying to find the resource that does exactly what you need it to do, and by the end of that you're like, oh, I could have just written it myself in this time, but I didn't, because it felt like it must surely be out there. I cannot be the only teacher in the world who's having this problem. I can't be the first person who's had issues with Common Rules and just needs something that's secondary friendly and doesn't have like primary school pictures of things around the edge or whatever that I can give out in lesson.
Totally, which is not that dissimilar actually. I think maybe the point is that there's a balance, isn't there? Because in that case, you're still getting something delivered to you, but the quality assurance isn't necessarily there. And I can certainly attest to it, not having been there with all things in the tests, the bounty of test resources. But like, I've just looked up while you were talking the post that we're talking about, and he says at the end, and thank you for this catalyst, Adam, by the way, if you do ever watch this. But he says, how do teachers become great? Not in a vacuum, certainly. There's much that is great that has already been written and said that can guide them on a path. But there's also a strong logic to say that they will never become great if they are consistently relying on a tool that does all their thinking for them. And I think maybe that's the point, isn't it? So we're really keen. We've always talked about this internally, that we're keen to give teachers everything they need to make the good decisions and to be a good teacher in the classroom, as ingredients rather than just giving it on a plate or so on. Whereas, so consistently relying on something that doing the thinking for them, you should avoid. Agreed. But then, particularly if you were going to end up using somebody else's PowerPoints anyway, why not have something which is quality assured, if you can adjust for that and ensure that that's the case, that had been made specifically for your instance by an AI model. Do you agree?
Yeah, I was that doing the thinking for them. I was thinking, not to use synonym for that word, I was reflecting upon the fact that really what you want to do is identify where you need the thinking to take place, isn't it? Because when with your ECTs, when they're taking home a stack of books and then you see them bring them in the next morning and they've covered it in red pen, every single book is annotated to high heaven, and you think you did not need to do that. You do not need to spend 4 hours marking if you're going to go to that level of detail. Like, here's how to strip it back almost. When you can pick out the thing you want your teachers thinking about and why you want them thinking about that, and then you almost clear everything else away to give space for that. So if you know that you don't have a really high quality, centrally designed curriculum or resource, whatever, that someone else has QA'd and said, yeah, this is really good, and you've all discussed how you're going to use it and what resources you're going to follow and how aligned you're going to be and when you're going to change it. If you don't have that, the thing you need your teachers to think about is what resources they use and if they're any good. In which case you put all your time into, let's understand how to prompt AI to generate resources, let's understand how to QA them, let's share things that we create, let's have a shared drive, put them all on there, or let's identify who is already providing the resources, like us, or Oak, or anyone else who's doing really cool stuff with resourcing. And if actually you're quite happy that your teachers know a good resource when they see one, then go and shift the thinking to somewhere else. Like, how are we embedding routines in the classroom that are predictable and improve behaviour and make learning easy? Or how are we differentiating lessons so that we are teaching to the top but are also scaffolding down for students who have gaps in their prerequisite knowledge?
Or doing responsive teaching based on effective questioning.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's just as a whole team focus on when, like in lesson observations, we're going to go around and see each other, and the thing we're looking for is when you act on information you've given, and then we talk afterwards about, like, why did you carry on or why did you change? So many opportunities, but you just have to think about what you want people to think about.
Preach.
Oh well, self-education done.